So our main students are traveling this week. So we have new students today, alhamdulillah. Huh? Yeah. One second. One second. Yeah, I will. I haven't. Bilal, is the clicker working? It's working. Oh, we are? Okay. Oops. Just pull this up real quick. Sorry. Oh, no, because اصلش برای ضبط خودمونه. لذا چراغا رو خاموش نمی کنیم دیگه. I'll explain. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. Alright, so continuing with the Sunnah, we finished Al-Kitab, the Quran, as one of the sources for Islamic law, that which the Mujtahideen refer to. And we began with the Sunnah a few weeks ago. And so we wanted to figure out how we can verify or authenticate the Sunnah. As I said again and again, the Sunnah is one thing. Those things which reflect the Sunnah are something else. Whether you want to call it a hadith or a riwayah or a khabar. So we just went with the khabar term. And so last session we talked about the different arguments that are out there, the conventional arguments for the hujjiyah of khabar wahid. Because we said khabar is two types. Either it gives you yaqeen or it doesn't. If it gives you yaqeen, then it's probably mutawatir. And if it's other than that, it's going to be referred to as khabar wahid. That's where there's a whole discussion, and I think one of the places where you'll find a lot of different opinions in regards to this khabar wahid throughout the course of the development of Shi'i fiqh over the centuries. So we talked about those different arguments that they have from the kitab, from the sunnah for khabar wahid, bindingness or hujjiyah. And then we talked about the ijma and how there's a clash there, different opinions on ijma. There's different claims of ijma. Some say that we have ijma, the khabar wahid is something that you can follow or you have to follow. Others say no, we have ijma that you're not supposed to follow it. And the attempts to reconcile between the two, we talked about that last session. And then finally, that last reason for the authenticity or for the authority of something like khabar wahid, which was what we call the bina'ul uqala or siratul uqala. Okay, so these are things that a mujtahid has to deal with and has to figure out. But in addition to that, when we want to verify what the sunnah is regarding different matters, and all we have is khabar wahid, we have to understand that there are different types of khabar wahid. Another thing that a mujtahid has to do is to figure out which one of these categorizations and grading systems they're going to have when it comes to hadith. Now we're just talking in terms of surely fiqh, but the same discussions might come other places. As I said before, there's a discussion on khabar wahid in other than fiqh, how much we can follow it in other than fiqh. But for now we're talking about fiqh. So there are 4 types of khabar wahid nowadays, they say. But then you also hear that some say there's only 2 types. Okay? And of course there's a lot of details that we'll skip. I'm just trying to give us an idea of what this discussion is that these mujtahideen have. So the 4 types of khabar wahid, this is a newer categorization. And when I say newer, it doesn't mean like 20th century or something. No, like 7th, 8th century onwards. We'll say that we have sahih, we have hasan, we have muwathaq, we have da'if, and you've probably heard these before. These 4 grades of hadith. And so with all of these, it revolves around the narrator or the narrators that are narrating the hadith, okay? So we look at the narrator themselves. That's going to be our criterion for whether or not a hadith is accepted or not, whether it is a da'if one or muwathaq or hasan and sahih. I'll say it very quickly because this is something that, once again, a lot of us have heard probably. What is a sahih hadith when it comes to this newer grading system? A sahih hadith will be the one in which a narrator or the narrators in it, they are all imami, shia, and the chain is connected, of course. There's no missing links in that chain. And that each of these individuals in the chain, now if you're lucky, you only have one person in the chain because you heard it from them. But if you're unlucky and you have like 7 or 8, then you have to verify all 7 or 8. However many links you have in this chain, all of them have to have a specific, we say tawthiq. They have to have been specifically said to be reliable. Okay, and the term for that is thiqa. Okay, they are thiqa. They have wathaqa. Okay, and we'll get to this later a little bit as well. So, if in the rijali books, okay, this person has specifically been pointed to and said, this person is reliable. Okay, this is going to be a thiqa individual. Sometimes this isn't the case though. They will say so many good things about somebody, but they won't say he's reliable. Now you might laugh at that, but here, that person, because they don't have a specific, they haven't been determined as specifically thiqa, that word hasn't been used for them, then we have a problem. Not a big problem, but a little bit of a problem, because that person will now not fall under the sahih category anymore. So let's say, for example, you have 4 links in a chain of narrators, okay? Out of these 4, 3 of them, when you look in the rijali sources, they say these guys are wonderful, the best, thiqa, all that. All right, that's great. But if one person even, by the rijali books that we have, I'll talk about that later as well. I'll talk about later. Those books that talk about these individuals, these people who narrate hadith. Yeah, that's a good question. Like, who's to specify that to begin with? Yeah, is it in the Quran? Is it in some mutawatir hadith or something? No. So we'll talk about that, as I said. But for now, for argument's sake, let's say even just one person out of these 4 has not been designated specifically as a thiqa individual, although they're praised in that same book. Yeah, that's enough for this chain to not be a sahih chain anymore. Okay, and this is what mujtahideen have to deal with if they're going to go by this system. So what happens? It goes down 1 grade. It goes to what? The hasan one. So if you have a chain that is connected, all the links are there, no one's missing, you know who all these people are, but not all of them have been designated as thiqa. Some have, others have been praised only, that's it. It becomes a hasan hadith. Okay? Yes? Not really, no. Like if the first one or the last one in the link, no. All in all, a chain is going to be as strong as its weakest link. Wherever this weaker link is enough to destroy everything. So you have 10, let's say 5, 8, whatever. You have that many thiqa narrators, all narrating from each other. But if one of them is not thiqa, is just praised in the books, has not been determined as, specifically thiqa, then this is not going to be a sahih hadith anymore. It's going to fall into the hasan category. Now that is assuming all the other boxes are checked. Okay, if not all the other boxes are checked, then we go down 1 more grade. And what is that? That's if they're trustworthy. They have been even specifically said to have been thiqa, but they're not Shia Imamiyah, 12 or Shia. Then again, it goes down a grade. This time it's not even Hasan anymore. Okay, this time it's going to be muwathaq. All right, so you have to make sure that they're thiqa or Imamiyah, but praiseworthy. That's it. You can take the hadith. Now, usually they will go with the Hasan hadith. They will go with the Muwathaq hadiths. But if you want a really good one, a Sahih one, yeah, all of those boxes have to be checked for all of those links, okay? Anything other than this falls under what category? Huh? Daif. All right? So as you see here, what's the criteria? The narrator, not the narration itself. We're looking at the chain, okay? And of course, this is what we're all familiar with. We've all heard this before. But then we have another grading system, I call it. And that is the older grading system and categorization of hadith. They're very simple. Either a hadith is sahih or it's da'if. Okay? Now, this isn't really discussed in our conventional usul books when we were studying in lower levels of Hawza, but it is a discussion, a very important one as well. Like, which one of these are you going to follow? What is the second one now? This second categorization, it revolves around what? It revolves around the narration, not the narrator. Okay? We look at the narration and where it's located, where we found it, who does it go back to, which books is it located in, things like that. You know, and you're like, okay, it's located in this book, it's in that book. I'll share the details of that, inshallah, in a little bit. Because of those clues that are surrounding the hadith, we will take that hadith as reliable. I'm like, this is something I can rely on. But the chain of narrators, there's some links missing. Some of them are da'if even. Some of these people, yeah, but look who's narrated, look which book we found it in. And I'll talk about what book means in this context, okay? Where did we find the narration? The fact that we found it here shows that, no, this is something special actually. But it's da'if. Yeah, it's da'if according to these later standards. But the older standards are saying this is sahih because of those other clues that we have regarding that narration. So we don't go to the chain of narrators here. Yeah, that might be something we might look at for certain reasons, but all in all, the chain of narrators is kind of irrelevant in this context, okay? So this is the other method that they have for grading these hadiths. So now, what's going on here? Let's get to some details, inshallah. It all goes back to something called wuthuq versus wathaqa, okay? Goes back to that. But to understand that, I have to tell us a little story first, okay? Of how this kitab of Usul al-Kafi that's in front of me now, where did it come from? Is it that during the time of the Imams, people were writing Usul Kafi books? Is it that during the time of the Imams, they were writing Bihar al-Anwar books? Is that what they were doing? Or something else was happening? No. When you look at Usul al-Kafi, what do you find? You find a very organized book with different chapters, and then each chapter has its theme. Yes, it has a title at the top that the author has added, and so all the relevant hadiths come under that chapter. Very simple, we're used to that, right? But did we know that it wasn't like this always? Back then, when they were compiling these things, a person like Al-Kulaini, who put together Al-Kafi, this poor guy had to go and actually gather a lot of, let's call them notebooks, that people had, that had listened to the Imam directly, or had gotten it from someone who'd listened it from the Imam directly. Bring all of these together, number one. Number two, they had scattered notes in them, these books, these notebooks. Scattered without any common theme in any of them. They had like different topics the Imam was talking about. The guy just wrote it down. So there's about 400 people, okay, who attended sessions of the Imams. And they say from Imam Ali all the way to Imam Askari, we have about 400 that we are sure about, that are reliable. They say there are more than that, but they say 400 is the number that we can rely on. Okay, there are 400 people who wrote directly from the Imams. They heard the Imam speaking. They wrote in their little notebooks. Now back then it wasn't necessarily a notebook. It might have been a tablet, not an iPad tablet as I said before, but their own little tablets, right? And so they write what the Imam said. They gather all of whatever they have in these notebooks, but when you look at it, one hadith is about Hajj, then someone asked the Imam about some akhlaqi thing, another person asked the Imam about a tafsiri matter. It's like a Q&A type of thing. But they're taking notes from these. Now, a person like Kulaini comes, what does he do? He puts all of these, he takes from all of these books that he has access to, that have reached him through his teachers, and he organizes them, puts them together, takes out some of the ones he feels that don't belong in his book, and we have Al-Kafi now. All right. So before Al-Kafi, there was something else. There was about 400 notebooks. Yeah. These are referred to as Al-Usul Al-Arba'miyah. It's a famous term, okay? Al-usul al-arba'miya. Don't forget what we're talking about. We're trying to get to wuthuq and wathaqa, okay? Now, these people are usually deemed trustworthy. These people, their notebooks, if you can get your hand on their books, that's something that's going to be accepted in these scholarly circles, okay? The problem is that out of these 400, about 16, I think they say, are left, yeah? And some of them, our ulama have mentioned in some of their books, but that's about it. We don't have those books anymore. And the reason why we don't have those books anymore, those notebooks anymore, is because when a person like Kulaini comes and does the work and puts out a book, a neat book like Al-Kafi, you don't have to worry about those scattered notebooks anymore. Yeah, it's all preserved there. You don't have to worry about the rest. These slowly they were destroyed, and no, we don't have them anymore, okay? And so because of that, these books that we were sure, if a hadith is in one of those notebooks, we don't have to worry too much about the sanad, the chain of narrators. Is this person reliable? Is this person not reliable? We don't have to worry about those things anymore. With the destruction of those notebooks goes this idea of now not having to worry about the chain of narrators anymore. Okay? What happens now? Well, you fast forward, you go to, let me see here. You go to the 7th or 8th century. The claim, okay? The claim is that these sources, these initial usul arba'mi'ah, it's reached the point where you don't have access to them anymore, to the point where you have no choice now to fall back on another method, at least to verify things. Okay? So this was kind of a reactionary thing. This is the claim, okay? Some have claimed this. Who is that person who's claiming it? A person by the name of Sheikh al-Bahai. He talks about it in one of his books, okay? And he's a big figure himself. And so they usually cite him when they're talking about this. He says, look, in the past, yes, we had access to all of these sources. We didn't have to worry. We had wuthuq, which means we were content. We had tranquility and calm and certainty that this is something I can rely on because my own people are bringing it in their notebook. It's there. I know it's there. These are my own boys, man. I don't got to worry, okay? But now that we don't have access to those, we have to figure something else out. Well, we have no choice now. And these links and chains grew more in number as well. So we have to verify what's going on here, okay? We don't have access to that anymore. That's the claim. Well, Bahai, you're saying that in the past, yeah, there were these clues, one of them being like, you have these 400 books or something that you can go back to. Can you explain that a little bit more? So I want to read off of the list. He has 5 things, he says, that are reasons, that are a means of us attaining and achieving wuthuq regarding a hadith. I have a hadith in front of me. I want to become sure that I can rely on this. How do I become sure? Look at the sanad. That's not how they do it in the past. What do you do then? Well, he says, the fact that a hadith was mentioned in many of the usul that were narrated. So there's like, let's see, you find a hadith in 10, 15 different usul out of the arba'mi'ah usul. That itself is enough. Who's the chain of narrators? I don't care, he says. Okay? The fact that a hadith was repeated in one or more than one of the usul. There's a difference here. Sometimes you have one hadith in different usul. Sometimes you have one hadith mentioned again and again in one of these usul. And to make it better, it's mentioned again and again in one, if not one, 2 or 3 even. That's even better. He says, look, the fact that it's mentioned again and again is enough for me to become sure that I can follow this. I have wuthuq, yes, that I can follow this. I have certainty that I can follow this. Me following it is justified. Is there any mention of chain of narrators? Who cares about it? No, we don't need the chain of narrators. The next one, if a hadith was in one of the usul that belonged to one of those very famous narrators that the Shia scholars all have a consensus that this is a person that you follow no matter what. All right, like the same ones that we've mentioned again and again, like Zurara and these ones. Yes? I don't know. Yes. So, Sheikh Bahai's list of, I know it's the right slide because we only have 2 slides tonight, and this is the second one. Yeah? So these are called the Ijma'i muhaddithin. That these are the ones, or Ashabul Ijma', these are the ones that we know we can follow, we can trust no matter what. Forget about it being repeated. Forget about it being in different usul. Forget about that. Even if I find this in one of those usul that belong to one of these guys, 10, 20 of them there are different names. All right, if it's in one of those, I'm set. I don't have to worry anymore. I don't care where he got it from. As a matter of fact, if he himself is telling me that my hadith, I don't even have a proper chain for it, but I wrote it down when it mattered. Okay, like Ibn Abi Umair is famous for this. It's a whole story that he lost his books and they were destroyed for whatever reason. So now he still has some of those hadiths. Can we rely on it because he's writing them down, but they don't have the full chain anymore. We don't care about the chain. Is it Ibn Abi Umair? Is it from his book? Yeah, okay, then we're set. Because he's one of those ones that we can follow for sure. Right? Yes. He doesn't explain at all. He just has a list in the beginning of his book. I actually went and found it, and I was looking for more details because I was curious. But he didn't explain anything. He just goes Arishi. He just reported these 5 things. I said that's enough for us. Yeah, but I was curious about, especially the first and second one. I wanted to figure out the exact difference between them. Yeah, but he didn't explain it at all. Some of the things he also said, I felt like it was a repetition. So I was thinking, there must be something here going on. I'm not getting what he's saying exactly. In that book, Mashriq al-Shamsain, which is more of a fiqh book. So this was in the introduction of it. Yeah. But I didn't do thorough research either into it more. The fourth one. If a hadith was in a book that has been presented to and verified by an imam. You'll have some cases where they take the book of so-and-so and they present it to the imam. They say, Imam, what do you think of this? This is pretty cool because we would think the imam will say, let me go through every hadith and make sure that everything's perfectly right. The imam sees it, he knows this is how the people are going to be able to only transmit their knowledge with each other. He says, look, this is a good book, it's a reliable book, go for it. He looks through it, and he says it's fine. It's not like all of the usul arba'mi'ah had this luxury, of course. Okay? It's not the case. But the ones that we know were presented to him, to the imam, and the imam said it's okay. I'll give you a couple examples. Although, I will say in parentheses here, the fact that this itself is a khabar wahid that's reaching us regarding the verification of this book, that itself there's something to talk about there. But all in all, we'll just say that, okay, if it's established for somebody that this book was actually shown to the imam, one of these notebooks that I said, then we can always follow that no matter what, even if that hadith is not repeated anywhere else. Okay? So it says here, for example, the book of Ubaydullah al-Halabi was presented to Imam al-Sadiq. He said, go for it. Or books of Yunus bin Abdul Rahman, that famous companion, or Fadl bin Shadhan, another famous one, were presented to Imam al-Askari, he says. These are the examples he gives. And so the Imam said, yeah, you can follow these books. So these books, you see, I'm referring to them as books, but they're literally really notebooks kind of thing. I don't want us to confuse it with a book like Kafi. That's all I'm saying, okay? These books are verified, and so, okay, you can follow. So do I need to look at the chain now? That's the point. No. Who cares about the chain? Who the narrator is a weak one. Who cares? It's weak according to your standards. For us, that's not what matters. It's irrelevant. What matters is that this is in this book, and this book is something that we can follow. We're justified in following. Finally, he says, finding the hadith in one of the books that was widely accepted by the Imamiyya community before that. Even if the book belonged to a non-Shia, like Hafs bin Ghiyath al-Qadi, he says. There's a book that everyone has accepted. It's a shuyu'. Have you noticed, like, sometimes when they say, when you want to cite the moon and the moon sighting wars, when they say one of the ways is, like, if it's something that everyone knows, something like that. If it's widely accepted, he says, the book, widely accepted by the Shia Imamiyya community and the scholars, then that also should be enough. Now, is it limited to this? Not necessarily. All in all, they say, look, if you have clues like these regarding the narration, not the narrators, this is going to be enough for you to be justified in relying on that hadith. Okay, so that's what we have for Shaykh al-Bahai and his list. When did all of this start though? So we discussed wuthuq so far. Now where did this wathaqa come in? Okay, so as I said, it reaches the 7th or 8th century. Now there is some difference of opinion here. Where exactly did this happen? Whatever it is, it's the school of Hilla's fault that this happened. All right, you have a person by the name of Ahmad bin Musa al-Ibn Tawus, the brother of that famous Ibn Tawus who wrote Iqbalul A'mal. Okay? The brother of him, Ahmad, he's in the 7th century. Some say he's the one who started this new categorization, the 4-1, not the 2-1, the 4-1. Where did he get it from? We'll talk about that a little bit later. Some say that it was him. Some say no. It was his student, Allama Hilli, the famous, the great Allama Hilli, who started this whole thing. Now, of course, Allama Hilli, the way they look, some look at him, they don't like him too much. Some of the ones who are a little more akhbari tendency, he went more into this kalam and all that kind of stuff. And so you'll find that they'll have issues with him sometimes. And all in all, the same ones who have issues with him there also have issues with him here. They say, wait a minute. How dare you change the criteria for grading hadiths from what we've done over the centuries till now to something else? And to make things worse, guess who does this also? The Sunnis do this. That's their grading system. You've just copy pasted it. Okay? How dare you? And in their defense, they're kind of right if that's the case. But I was reading an article as well in regards to this, and the person who was writing the article, although he was against this newer system, he at the same time said, so what if it's from the Sunnis? Yeah? If really the claim is true, that the hadith, it reached the point that now they're in a vacuum for us. We don't have them with all those clues and contexts that the previous scholars had. Yeah? What's wrong with us following, even if it's from the Sunnis? But he said the problem is this. He said the problem is who says, and it's a nice research that he's done. I think it's part of his thesis actually for his master's or his PhD, this person. But he says that, look, the thing is, I have a problem with what the claim is that all of the clues have been lost during Al-Hilli's time, during Ibn Tawus's time. Who says all those clues were lost? And then he starts going into different instances and cases where, no, we still have it. Ibn Tawus himself is saying he has this book, this book, this book, this book. Or Hilli says, I have this book, this book, this book. Wait a minute, who says that we're out of those clues and we don't have them anymore? No, we have those clues still to verify, according to the old system, that something is sahih. It's something that we're justified in relying on because it's located in the right place. This hadith is in the right place. Yeah? So this is an issue now, and there are different opinions on this. Even till today, I'll even see colleagues sometimes talking about this. And not just in fiqh, but in other matters as well. It gets kind of messy, yeah? That some will fight and say, well, I believe in this. Well, why do you believe in this? Because we have hadith for this. Well, like, this is a weak hadith. He said it's weak according to this method. But according to that older method, it's in one of the main books. Why should we put it aside? All right? Which brings me to what this person by the name of Abdullah Mamaqani says. Abdullah Mamaqani, well, before I get to him, the Akhbaris, yeah, I already explained. They call out this new grading system. They say, oh, well, this is from the Sunnis. We're not going to accept it. And they have other issues with it as well. What was the other one? I wrote it down. Yeah, they say, look, this will cause us to put aside so many hadiths. Because there are hadiths that came in those good notebooks, in those usul arba'miya, that the chain wasn't so good, but because it was there, we would accept it. But now you're coming up with a new system, we have to put all of those aside. Okay? And I'll give you some examples of them later, some of these people, that contemporary scholars, how far they go in regards to that. All right. Yeah. I wouldn't say that, no. Would you think it was 95%? Yeah, it's not going to be. If it was 95%, then we'd be good, But it's not the case, yeah. No, it's going to be more than that. And then the ones that don't overlap, okay, there sometimes might be like even contradictory, Which one are you going to choose eventually? Yeah, that's where Ijtihad comes in, really. And it's not just in fiqh, and it gets even harder in other matters, of non-fiqhi matters, when it comes to certain aqa'id that we have. certain things that we practice even maybe sometimes, you know? Yeah. Huh? 50%. Yeah. And so I'll get to that later a little bit. There are books that are written on these where they use the new methods or their own methods, and then to comb through these hadiths, it gets pretty scary. Okay. I don't know the percentages. I'm glad the brother is here today. He might know. Huh? That's a very good question, though. Hmm? Yeah, exactly. No, very good observation. Exactly. Or all of this goes down the drain if it's 95% overlap. We don't have too much of an issue. Behbudi, right? Behbudi, yeah. I forgot the name of it. Sahil, yeah. So we'll get to that towards the end, some of these works, inshallah. So now, a person wants to swoop in and save the day by the name of Abdullah Mamaqani. He is known for the biggest and most famous, not most famous, but the biggest in density work on Rijal. Tanqih al-Maqal it's called. And there's a lot to say about that book. But anyway, and he's an interesting individual himself and his descendants, some of them. But anyway, he has an excerpt, a paragraph here I want to read to you, okay? He says, people, don't worry, don't worry. Look, the ones who came up with this new system, they were trying to avoid other problems. They felt that, you know, we don't have those clues anymore, which allow us to rely on something without looking at its chain, right? Because of that, or else they're not saying this is the exclusive way to grade a hadith. This is what he says, which is nice, right? He's trying to save the day here. Let me read. He says, I've said before that the long passing of time and the loss of many of these qara'in or clues and the confusion as to what the reality of things is pushed the later scholars. Now this Mamaqani, of course, he lived like maybe, I don't know, 150, 200 years ago at max. I don't know. I'm not good with numbers. So he's not from the 7th, 8th century. No, he's in these last 200, 200 years. Anyway, he says, where was I? Pushed the later scholars of the Imamiyya to come up with this system in order to separate authentic from inauthentic hadiths. They had no choice, in other words. Now keep in mind that the system is only to be able to assess the reliability of the narrators of the hadiths without taking into consideration other external factors for accepting a hadith. In other words, these ones who now came and said, no, we're going to look at the narrators themselves, when they say that, they're saying that. But at the same time, they're acknowledging themselves that this is if we don't have any other clues that allow us to accept the hadith. He's just reminding us this. Without taking into consideration other external factors. And then he goes on, he says, the intent wasn't to make this method the only way to authenticate them. This is why you see them putting aside muwathaq and even sahih hadiths or accepting da'if ones due to external clues. He says, look, the ones who made up this new system, that you say they copied from the Sunnis, but it's not necessarily the case that they did. But these ones who came up with this new way of grading hadiths, guess what? They themselves will sometimes accept a hadith that is da'if according to those new standards, and will sometimes put aside a hadith that has a good chain of narrators. A sahih narration, they'll put it aside. This shows that they're looking at something else other than just the chain. It's only when you have no other choice that you look at the chain. That's what they say. Okay? Think about it. As a person who wants to be a mujtahid, this is the stuff you have to deal with. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to let the mujtahidin deal with it. The ones who say, like, you know, we can do our own ijtihad. Why do taqlid? Well, bismillah, no problem. Let's talk about these things. So Mamaqani says this. All right, thank you. You saved the day. But now there are others who criticize him and anyone else who might sound like him. They say, look, we see that practically this is what it's come down to. Practically what we see is that this is sometimes the only method that's used, the only standard that hadiths are gauged with. So you're telling us that, you know, they're going to sometimes, you know, leave this, go back to the old method. But no, we see that nowadays this is happening where they only rely on this method to authenticate hadiths. Yeah. All right. And another problem, do I have this in the, let me see. Yes. Plus, I said I'll talk about this a little later. This is what I want to say. The Rijal itself, there are so many questions. Remember you asked, who said that these people are reliable? Okay. Good question. A person who lived in the 5th century, like Sheikh Tusi says he's reliable. The question you're going to ask me, you're going to turn around and say, well, has Sheikh Tusi, who lived in the 5th century, has he seen a person like Zurara who lived in the 2nd century or 3rd century, whenever he lived? No, he hasn't seen it. So when he says this person is reliable, where's he getting that from? Okay, he didn't get it from anywhere then. It's his own understanding. It's his own ijtihad on this matter. I'm not supposed to follow him when he's telling me his ijtihad on the person. Either you have a verse of the Quran that says Zurara is to be followed. You have a hadith by someone who says Zurara is to be followed, which we have some hadiths by the Imams about certain companions. Yes, follow this one, follow that one. We don't have this for all of them. The thousands of narrators that we have out there, we don't have anything for all of them. So we don't have a hadith for all of them. We don't have ijma. We don't have anything for them. So the only thing that I'm left with is the ijtihad of a Sheikh Tusi who lived in the 5th century, or Najashi who lived in the 5th century. These guys are doing their own ijtihad. Who says I have to follow them? And then you go further forward, you find a person like Hilli. He has a book on Rijal. 7th or 8th century. 8 centuries between the time of the hadiths and this person. How do you know this person is reliable? Okay, I can understand you probably are right, but probably is not going to cut it, remember? Everything has to be yaqeen for us. We don't have that. So this baggage comes with it. Some of these scholars, they talk about these things, they say, we haven't gotten an answer to this one yet. We haven't gotten an answer to this. There is something you can say to it. I don't want to get into it. This is not a Rijal class or anything. There are some answers that can be given, but all in all, there's a lot of baggage that comes with the Rijali books, okay, and the terms that they use therein as well. So that's its own problem as well. So they criticize Mamaqani. They say, look, practically, this is what everyone's doing now. And also, in addition to that, Rijal itself has a lot of problems. Now, the Sunnis, I actually saw a video like a week or two ago, that some of these Sunnis even call us out because our Rijali works are not as strong as theirs, unfortunately. Okay, they're very clear cut about things. So, for example, the guy was calling us out. He was saying, look, the Shia have a book this thin on ad-du'afa, the weak narrators. Okay. This is the one book that we have. And then he said, look at my books. He pointed to the shelf. There's 9 volumes of da'if narrators that their scholars have pointed out. Hey, people, these ones cannot be relied on. And so he was like kind of calling us out, like, look, this is how much work they've done. So, but this isn't the work that we've done or have not done. It's not about that. It's about the Shia have always been persecuted, and our books have always been lost, unfortunately. Yeah. To the point where one of our main books, we didn't have 4 hadith books. We had 5 main hadith books, brothers and sisters. Okay? What are they? We had Kafi, we have Faqih, we have Istibsar and Tahdib. There was a 5th one that was very dense. Madinatul Ilm, I think it was called. Madinatul Ilm by Sheikh al-Saduq. That one is lost completely. We just know that it existed because others talked about it in the past. The manuscript of that never reached us. So, like, stop calling us out. Yes, it does seem like we have issues there, and we do. But there's a reason for that. Not because our scholars didn't put enough work into things. No. But all in all, there's baggage here. So, they say, we're going to go and just look at the chains, these Allama Hilli onwards. That's called wathaqa. We're not after wuthuq anymore because we can't achieve wuthuq when it comes to a narration. What we can achieve is to figure out if this person in the Rijali works has been pointed at as a person who has wathaqa, a person who is thiqa, is reliable. And each and every one of those people in the chain have to have this. Okay? Now, having said all of that, I want to get into some of these scholars. Here I wrote Ayatul Khu'i, but there's other ones I want to say very quickly as well. So, for example, Ayatul Khu'i, initially they say he was a wuthuqi person, but then he turned into, no, the other one. Yeah? He said, for me, it has been established that you have to be thiqa. There's nothing else that I will accept. And so because of that, because the chain of narrators are so important to him, he has a whole work, Mu'jam Rijal al-Hadith, which is a super awesome work. And it's very big, okay? And it's just a collection of all of these different narrators and every detail you need about them, okay? But yeah, he's very strict, very mathematical and black and white about things, right? Thiqa, I take. Non-thiqa, I don't care where this is narrated, who said it, where I got it from, I don't care. I'm not taking it. So he's one of those. So all of a sudden, that pool of hadith, boom, it shrinks that you can take from. Okay? He says this. He says, I don't care if ulama of the past, they actually accepted a hadith that might be weak according to my standards. That's not going to be enough for me to follow it, based on what I was reading before this. Okay? So that's Ayatul Akhwi. Then we have others. There are some who say, or even worse than him, I would say, they have written books on, for example, Bihar al-Anwar. I don't know, there's 110 volumes of Bihar. And they've shrunk it down to how many? 3? 8? 8 volumes, huh? Yes, 8, right? Mashra'atul Bihar, it's called. It's 8 volumes. He says out of 110 volumes, 8 volumes. Sheikh Asif al-Muhsini, he passed away a couple of years ago, right? So he's very strict on these things. Like, now think about it. How much people are getting their aqa'id from a book like Bihar, and then this person, he says, if I'm going to apply those very strict standards, and I'm going to take out the repetitions of hadith as well, I'm left with 8 volumes. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with this. I'm just saying, look, this is ijtihad. Ijtihad is mercy. It has no mercy. It doesn't care what you think. It doesn't care if, oh my God, all my life I was raised with this opinion and understanding. It doesn't care. This mujtahid, this is how he sees it. All of a sudden, you go from 110 to 8 volumes. And then there are other ones that are more contemporary. They're still alive today. They straight up say, I have an issue just with all in all with khabar wahid. Right? Unless there's clues, other than that, don't come to me with chain of narrators. And it doesn't matter if it's in fiqh, aqaid, history, whatever it is, tafsir. It doesn't matter. And these are big people too. They're out there. Yes. Yes, brother. Yeah. The good thing is that, that's a good question. He's asking, if we get rid of all these volumes, then is that enough to address all the needs that we have, Islamic needs that we have? And so look, in the end, we have more general principles and rules that we fall back on when we don't have Quran or Hadith for something. So for example, can I smoke? Well, assuming it's not harmful, assuming all those other things, let's just say smoking is just like drinking water. We don't have a Hadith for it, do we? And we're sure we didn't have a hadith for it before either, probably. Okay, so all in all, we don't. What am I supposed to do? Well, there's general rules that everything's halal on you until it's proven that it's haram on you. So we'll have these general rules and principles to fall back on eventually. But yeah, it will be a more minimalistic type of faith and religion we have. Forget about fiqh. We're talking about other beliefs, okay? We're talking about some of the things that, the stories that we have, some of the understandings that we have regarding certain matters of faith. Yeah, even those, yeah, we'll have to revisit if, this is the way we're going to approach these hadiths. Yeah, and that's why some people, they say, I'm going to go straight to the Quran, unless I have a very strong hadith for something, but I'm going to get most of what I have from the Quran, for example. So this is the exact opposite of the Akhbari school, where they're very, open with the hadiths. We'll talk about that later. But I want to make sure that that no one thinks that, okay, the old method of authentication of hadiths, which was, if it's in a good book, then we take it, that this is necessarily the akhbari method only. No. Akhbaris are that plus more sometimes. Okay? They're that plus more, I would say. But this was a method that everyone had in the past, they say. But then it changed over the centuries. And now here we are. Yes. Usul al-Kafi, he had access. Yeah, ibn Yaqub. Yeah, so a lot of the ones that he has, if it's verified that he's bringing this hadith from a certain person that we know that had one of those notebooks, yeah, and a lot of them are like that. Is it all of them? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Yeah. So that's about it for this, but there's a lot of discussions here, a lot of discussions, of course, that we skip. We're just scratching the surface so we understand that there's a lot to this matter and that meets the eye. Yeah, so any questions before I end? All right, walhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And no class next week for a long time. Alhamdulillah. So I'm gonna be traveling a little bit, and then Muharram's gonna start, and then Muharram Safar, everything's haram except for, and then after that, inshallah, we'll see what we're doing. Okay, inshallah. And a big warm welcome to some of our guests that are visiting us. They know who they are. They're very special colleagues of ours and teachers of ours from Qom. So inshallah, they like their stay here, inshallah.
سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآل محمد
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأنه حجة الله صلوات الله عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأنه حجة الله صلوات الله عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
نه نه اختیار شما اگه مهمان داری من شما اگه مهمان هستن یه چیزی اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم يا دائم الفضل على البرية يا باسط اليدين بالعطية يا صاحب المواهب السنية صل على محمد وآله خير الورى السجي واغفر لنا يا ذا العلا في هذه العشية. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي غارت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تأتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك واستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب غيرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت وتجرأت بجالي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فاضح من البلاء أقلت وكم من عثار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لا السؤال له نشرت اللهم أعظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت علي من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شدي وثاقي يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتقضيتي أبني لابتداء كرمك وصالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى علي قلبي من معرفتك ولهجا به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدة وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقة وبشكرك مادحة وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك يا كريم يا رب يا كريم يا كريم وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلايا الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثور يسير بقاء قصير مدته فكيف احتمالي لبلاغ الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاغ تسول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته فلئن سيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين البلاء وفرغت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وابني يا إلهي صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج العاملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية أعمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وضاقت مع عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان لتوحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات مع ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أرتع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد مقانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المقاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من علي أجريتها أن تاب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته وأعلنته أخفيت وأظهرت وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بذري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشتد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في البارزين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بالسوء الفأريد ومن كادني فكيد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأغربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني عثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت له وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
أحسنت. متوجه زياد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة، السلام على 9 المعصومين من ولد الحسين، السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء ومعين الضعفاء والفقراء أيها الرضا ورحمة الله وبركاته، السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل